在这里说一声，说下一步有那个形态的继续保留，要不然他不知道什么时候开始录，他把我剪辑了。没关系。
Power in very few hands. And so what we need is a secure delegation and secure incentives. Without this, blockchain does not really cannot work properly, and you end up in concentrating the power in a few people, like the miners or somebody else. So, secure incentives have been neglected by blockchain projects so far. They did not focus on it, but they are an essential part of that system.
So you once said that it's very hard to have the formal proof of no incentives.
Sorry?
Formal proof. You once said before that I think you believe in this no incentives will work, but you felt it's very hard to formal prove it. So now, do you have any new thoughts about it?
No. What I'm saying is that in principle, when I said that even no incentives could work in Algorand, right? Because assume if you take a Bitcoin, where participation requires buying a lot of computer equipment, you have to waste a lot of electricity. If you don't reward people once they produce a block, nobody will produce blocks. Right? If participation is very work intensive, you need to pay people a lot of money. If I'm going to say participation is trivial, do you really need to be rewarded? It's not clear. The case can be made that you don't need to do so. There is a lot of things that we do for free just to support things in society. So nonetheless, just to be sure, in Algorand, we will have incentives, but there will be secure incentives, meaning incentives that do not degenerate and cause concentration of power. And in my opinion, in Bitcoin, the rise of miners and mining pools is the product of a bad incentive scheme, an incentive scheme which was not well designed and caused concentration of powers in the hands of a few miners.
So how will the auction work?
Okay, so we believe that typically whenever you want to acquire tokens, at an ICO or something, the typical project says, I'm going to sell the tokens at the auctions. In some cases, they also have pre-sales at the discounted price. And then when they sell auction and ICO, you have a fixed price. So you say every token is, say, 1 yuan. You declare how many yuan you're going to put, and you're going to get, how many tokens you're going to get. So these practices, you can ask, is this a fair price that I'm paying? Well, I don't know. That's the price. If you want, take it or leave it. And by the way, it's certainly a little bit unfair that somebody else before you got the same number of tokens at a discount price, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's is not a good sense of community. So what we want to do is that we never pre-sold anything. So we will launch. We raised money by raising equity in our company, and now we have, having raised the money, we will launch the network, right, in a few months from now, and then we will make available our tokens to other people by a sequence of auctions. So therefore, we don't decide what the price of the token is. You will decide, which is a much more fair way. Because, the market will decide what the price of our auction is, not us. And I believe that unless you treat fairly everybody, we cannot really generate a blockchain or a cryptocurrency in which everybody feels that is fairly treated, and everybody can participate, and everybody can participate because it's easy to participate, and everybody has the same responsibilities and rewards about everything else. So it's really going to be a very egalitarian system.
Will this token be traded on secondary market or?
Well, whatever happens in secondary market, I imagine, history shows that secondary markets have a life of their own. You cannot stop people from having, a secondary market. If I now
will be done on some exchanges or not?
So sure, there is going to be exchanges too. So people, when they find it more practical, say, I don't want to go to the auction to buy algos, but some people already have algos, so I may want to go to an exchange and buy algos. And we are happy that this happens. But we want to give everybody the option to participate to our auctions, and which actually these are auctions done on chain, so you can actually see that the price that you pay is really fair, because everybody can see what the bids are. Everybody sees at the end of the day how much, and what is the price that they can because everything is on the blockchain. It's a very transparent system. So when you know that you bought somehow 1,000 algos, say at the price of $2, then you know that you've been fairly treated, because you can compute all the other bids and you can compute what the price has to be. But if you want to go at an exchange and buy it there, be our guest.
But will be the effect? I mean, think that because your probability to be chosen to be verified is have a probability with the money you hold, right? With the token you hold, right?
So we are talking not of the auction. We are talking about you are you are discussing two different things. One thing is the auction at which you buy the algos.
Yes.
And the other thing is the individual lottery in which you yourself select yourself for proposing a block or for helping verifying a block and agreeing on a block.
Yes, but the probability that you were chosen to be verified is related to the token you have, right?
Yes.
Yes, but what if, because maybe in exchanges there's a price volatility, right? So how will people balance? Maybe they found that maybe your prices got very higher and they want to sell or buy some of their tokens. Will that affect will these two systems affect each other?
No, because the mechanism of algorithm is such that your ability to be selected to perform a very simple function in algorithm depends on the number of tokens you have at that very precise moment. You cannot, you are welcome to do an exchange, to buy more, to sell more, but at a very point in time, a given point in time, whatever amount of algos you have, this will determine your probability of being selected. Let's put it this way. Every token in algorithm has the same influence in keeping the blockchain strong and secure by taking some very simple actions. So, and the protocol and the participation mechanism is so simple that even the owner of one algo can totally participate in any action. Yes, so of course, if you have, if every algo has the same things, if you have 100 algos and I have 10 algos, you have 10 times more probability that one of your algos is going to be selected. But that is actually important in two things. First of all, because if you have a probability that does not depend on the algos you have, I can mount a sibling attack, which means that I pretend that I'm not one Silvio. I have a Silvio 1, I have a million Silvios, and if each one of them wins, I win. That is very easy to attack the system. Instead, algorithm makes sure that if I have one key with a million algos, or I have a million keys with one algo each, my probability of being selected is exactly the same. So that is a security system. Second of all, in a money system, is only rational that people who have actually more at stake in the system have a more influence in keeping the system strong and secure. By the way, all these votes, having more money in our system does not enable you to become richer, only enables you to have more to say to keep the blockchain strong and secure. So, because it's in your best interest, if you have a lot of algos, that the algos continues to be secure. Otherwise, you don't find people that want to accept your algos, right? So that is the idea.
So I know that you get some money from the venture capital, right, at the beginning of
Yes,
your
yes.
start. So how will this venture capital get benefited from your business or this?
Well, there are many ways. Like like in any other project, as the team that has put the network, as constructed a network, we are going to have in the Genesis block some part of the algos, right? And so we are going to be owner of a bunch of algos at the beginning, and so that is one way that you can that you can have. And by the way, as we are going to have more. We are not going to. The Algorand will be in charge. The network will be donated to a foundation, which is going to be a non-profit foundation. The foundation can use different firms to continue the development of the protocol. But we believe that we are going to be one out of many that the foundation may choose, right? And we are going to come up ourselves, like in any companies with new services, new things. So in general, if you believe in a company, if you want to having a piece of it, may be a good idea.
Yeah. So talking about the applications. So now, what do you think about the application might be, the scenarios?
In my opinion, the first application, no doubt, is going to be a medium of exchange. Because right now, none of the projects out there is a medium of exchange.
Yes.
Okay? Because Bitcoin is not a medium of exchange. It supports too few transactions per second to be a medium of exchange. At most, is an asset or a liquid gold, something that you a store of value, but it's not a way to transact because they allow so few transactions. So number one application will be to be a medium of exchange. Having done that, there is going to be other type of application. Like for instance, is a really name token or putting unique assets on the blockchain, or if you want in between quotes, open quotes, tokenization of the world, right? So where you want to put a list on a blockchain a particular property. And I think that is something that will be very valuable. Why? Because transfer the property, if the ownership of the property is on the blockchain, it can be immediate and frictionless, and you can transfer to anybody in the world. So if you are the owner of a property listed on a blockchain, you can transfer to anybody else in the world who wants it and is willing to pay for it very easily. So that would be a good thing. And in general, the property becomes more valuable than a property, than the same property if you have to transfer only to the local people. Because the more potential buyers there are, the better it is. Better yet, if you are not required to buy the property in its entirety, but you can actually buy a piece of the property. If you auction off the entire property, you can fetch a much higher price for the property. Assume, let's dream a little bit, and let's assume that the buildings are put on the blockchain. And let's assume that, I was in Shanghai just 2 days ago, and I was at the famous Bond, right? There is a beautiful view of the city with some very nice buildings and some very important office buildings there. Assume that you are the constructor of an new office building at the Bond in Shanghai, right? Wow. Okay. So, and assume that you want to put this property on the blockchain and you want to sell it at auction. Now, I am a resident in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Right now, I cannot participate at an auction of an office building in Shanghai. That is not something that I can do. But if you posted an Algorand has all this auction mechanism which are transparent, auction on a blockchain. Now I can bid $10,000 to buy a little piece of this office. It's not something which is available to me right now. And I'm better off if this happens because I can now finally participate to a transaction which was only for the chosen few before. Now I can participate too. You as a constructor, you are delighted because now anybody, even people who have a little money, but they can bid a little bit of money and you can fetch a much fairer price for your property this invest in blockchain, right? I believe that this tokenization of a unique property on the blockchain and auctions is a particular way to actually realize a much better value. By the way, that's why at Algorand we are going to use the same auctions that we use to sell our own currency to enable anybody who wants to sell their property to use the same auctions. Because if it works for us and we trust them for ourselves, you can trust the same auctions for selling your own property. Right. So if we endow the blockchain of all these things, I believe that we're going to create really a currency or that is very valuable. And by the way, we had to solve, as we solve in Algorand, a lot of things to make. So for instance, we worry at Algorand about not only secure incentives, but also about other things that other projects don't worry about, such as stabilization, monetary stabilization. Scalability is important because otherwise there is not enough value in the blockchain if the blockchain doesn't scale. But assume you solve scalability. If you don't solve also price stability, you'll never use the ability to scale, because assume that Alibaba has a lot of customers, and Alibaba wants to certainly could use Algorand or another cryptocurrency if they want to sell their stuff. I can say I sell in yuan, here is the price in yuan, here is the price in dollar, and here is the price in Algorand. But if Algorand doesn't solve price stabilization, I never push the Algorand button, because I'm saying maybe if I push the button to buy 20 minutes from now, I get a discount. So you'll never use it. So you need to solve all these other things. So Algorand is really an ecosystem in which there are incentives, price stabilization, decentralization, scalability, all solved at once. If you solve only part of it, it's not enough. You have to solve them, all of them at once. And that's what we are very excited about this project, and that we think that it's going to capture both the imagination and the needs of a community. And by the way, in Algorand, we also have another unique capability, if I may, which is that we have a consensus protocol that not only allows us to generate the next block, but also allows us to agree on or put to vote change of monetary policy, or adopting a new rule, or adopting a new improvement. And I think that typical projects are very static, they never change. And I believe that actually life is all about change. Better said, life is about intelligent adaptation. And no fixed set of rules can capture intelligent adaptation. So we need a protocol that allows us to incorporate into what we do new ideas which are good, whether we generate them or somebody else proposes them. And we have our protocol works by propose and agree, propose a new block usually, and agree on the new block. But this propose and agree, propose and agree, propose and agree, immediate agreement, we believe that most of the time, 99.9% of the time, will be agreement on what? On the next block. But we can agree on anything, including an improvement of a protocol, a change of a protocol. I think that is very key to have a very valuable blockchain. Otherwise, pretty soon people, anything in life becomes obsolete, old, and should be replaced. So the ability to improve ourselves is crucial in life.
So about these applications, and now just imagine, or are you already doing some negotiations or some business development, or just working on the technology now? But
Well, simultaneously with our we already reached the test net, so our protocol is already tested. First we tested internally, then we tested with some selected partners, and then we are going to launch the mainnet, and the currency will be live, and we start the auctions of the currency. But of course, we start business relationship right now, and if anybody wants to contact us because they have good ideas that they want to have our use our blockchain to do something, we'll be delighted to start business arrangements. And in fact, I believe that Algorand, because of his flexibility, because of his true differentiation, because of his extremely trivial computation and therefore essentially very low fees, be an ideal platform to transact, and is also an ideal platform for anybody who wants to build a new application to run it on Algorand.
Regarding the profitability that you just said, that that's many discussion about stable coin these days. So,
well, stablecoin, I'm not very fond of stablecoin. I think it is a very simplistic way. Of course, we are going to have use for stablecoins, right? But I believe that what is much more important is not stability, but predictability. So let's assume that you have an asset whose value goes up or down. So I mean, the important thing is that not that is fixed price, but that the price is predictable. You don't want a daily fluctuation. If our platform becomes more and more valuable because people with bright ideas develop a new application to run on it, of course it will become more valuable. But what will become important is that to let it acquire that value without daily fluctuation. Because if you have an asset that is going to appreciate, say at 10%, then are you upset? And no, you know how to plan, right? But what you don't want is the daily fluctuation. So let's put it this way. So there are certain even currency like the Canadian dollar who don't try to fight the trend up or down, but they try to take away the daily fluctuations. And I think that there is a relative stability. So we don't want to be stable against somebody else. We want to be stable relative to ourselves in the sense that we are a bit predictable on what is going to happen on a day by day. So that you should not be agonizing whether to buy something now or 10 minutes from now.
So you are working on this thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not only working, we have our solution, and now we are going to put it on use.
Solutions about this process.
Yes, so we are going to, our plan is for sure is introduce it, and not right away, but somehow but in a few months. I think that it is good that things fluctuate and people see what the possibilities is before you start talking about stabilization, even though it is relative stabilization.
So no details, right? Or
no details right now. So we are going to introduce, so remember, we have a protocol which has this unique ability, which is to incorporate new features anytime we want in a very simple manner without splitting the community or splitting the currency. So we are going to have, however, a version which is going to be loaded of good, new, valuable properties in terms of scalability, security, and incentives, and so on and so forth. And the other ones will introduce them a little bit at a time, thanks to our self-improving protocol that allow us to do so. Because remember, to be responsible, any new feature you add, you must test it for 3 months at least to make sure that it really works, because that's the responsible thing to do. So the more features, more months. At some point in time, we want to launch the network rather than testing. And we already have a plan of feature. We are going to be busy in the next few years. We already know what to do. And by the way, we believe that we will continue this innovation. We don't have actually a fixed set of features. So very often in some currency, the new idea is the new particular network, and that's it. And so for us, instead, we want to really an expandable network, and we have a protocol that incorporate change and improvements, and therefore we want to continue to improve and to absorb in the protocol. But we must have a version 1, and then we know how to augment it with a lot of stuff for several years to come.
So maybe last question. Okay. So what about the competitors? Do you have like IoTA, Definity, Cardinal? Are there competitors?
So of course, Definity is a very serious player, and they also play close to their chest. So my impression, they don't exactly publish exactly what they do, but they seem to be very rigorous in their approach. And by the way, competition is good. And I also believe that the opportunity here in blockchain is enormous. We are talking about trillions of dollars of market opportunity, and it's not going to be one blockchain takes it all. But I believe that we don't need, however, I also think, 2,000 blockchains as they are now, but at the end I believe that there is going to be an handful blockchains that will survive, and we believe that Algorand will be one of them. But I also believe that there are going to be others, and that is actually is to be expected, and is good to be so. In any case, competition can only but forces all us to improve ourselves.
So time is limited. Yeah. So maybe later, if I